What if the most feared being in the galaxy wasn't a monster, but a woman hidden behind a veil for centuries, waiting to be seen? When a human dares to choose the unchosen, a quiet act of courage ignites a fire across the stars. Love defies tradition. Secrets are unmasked, and two unlikely souls risk everything to change the fate of entire worlds. This isn't just a story. It's a revolution wrapped in starlight. Will you dare to watch what happens when someone chooses the forgotten? If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The grand dome of the stellar assembly pulsed with soft light, its silver walls reflecting the glow of 1,000 alien species gathered under one roof. Every century, the choosing ceremony was held here, an ancient tradition where beings from across the galaxy came to choose and be chosen. It was not about ownership, but connection. Partnerships formed here had sparked treaties, friendships, even interstellar love. Creatures of every kind stood proudly on crystal platforms, their forms both beautiful and strange. Winged entities with eyes like suns, translucent beings that shimmered with inner light, and proud warriors with skin of stone and glowing veins. But away from the center of the room where the music played and dignitaries smiled, stood one figure no one dared to approach. Tall and still, draped in a veil of silver threads that floated as if weightless, the last of the star shades stood in silence. Her name was Lysera. She had come to this ceremony for over 200 years, yet not once had someone stepped forward to choose her. Some said she was cursed, others believed she could see the deepest secrets of a soul. Myths had grown like vines around her name. Her people, the Isarin, were known for their mysticism, their reluctance to share their ways, and for the law that declared the Starshade princess must remain veiled until chosen. But no one had ever been brave or foolish enough to try. Until today. From the edge of the crowd, a human stepped forward. His name was Nail, and he had arrived only days earlier as part of Earth's new diplomatic efforts. Unlike others, he didn't carry himself with arrogance or fear. Nail had a quiet way about him, observant and thoughtful, as if every new sight was something to be felt rather than judged. While others mingled or gazed in awe at the displays of beauty and power, his eyes had been drawn to the corner where the veiled figure stood, alone beneath a beam of starlight. He walked slowly, the crowd parting in surprise. Whispers echoed across the hall. Some gasped, others frowned. A few even looked away in discomfort. No one had ever approached the veiled starshade, and now a human, a species still considered new and unpredictable, was doing so without hesitation. Nael stopped before Lysera and looked up at her. "You don't belong in the shadows," he said simply, his voice calm but firm. Lysera's veil shifted slightly, as if stirred by his words. Her voice, when it came, was like a melody in the quiet. "And you, human, do not fear me?" Nael shook his head. "I don't fear stories. I like to know the truth for myself." A silence fell over the room. Even the music dimmed, as if holding its breath. "Then speak," she said, her voice, "Oh. Why do you choose to stand here?" Nael smiled slightly. "Because everyone else sees a mystery and walks away. I see someone who's been standing alone for far too long." The simplicity of his words struck Lysera more deeply than she expected. For centuries, beings had either ignored her or looked at her with suspicion. This human didn't offer flattery or worship. He offered something rarer, understanding. "Will you choose me?" she asked, the words ancient and ritualistic. Nael didn't pause. "Yes, I choose you." Gasps filled the hall. Some shouted warnings, others just stared. But Nael didn't hear them. He stepped forward, and Lysera reached out her hand, pale beneath the veil. Their fingers touched, and the platform beneath her pulsed with light. The veil shimmered as if reacting to the choice, but it did not fall. Not yet. The choosing was complete. Tovin, a senior official from the assembly, rushed forward. "Human, do you understand what you've done? The Starshades, Are not, I know exactly what I've done, Nail interrupted. I made a choice. Isn't that the point of this ceremony? Lysara stood taller beside him. Let him speak. He has chosen me, and I have accepted. Tovin backed away, unsure. The rules were old and rarely tested. No law had ever been written for what to do if someone truly chose the veiled starshade. Without another word, Lysara turned and led Nail from the hall. The crowd parted in silence, some watching with awe, others with suspicion. Whispers trailed behind them like shadows. They walked through the long corridors of the assembly ship until they reached a small shuttle marked with the Icerin sigil. Nail paused at the door. Are you sure you want me to come with you? He asked. Lysara turned to him. You've already walked through every barrier. What lies ahead can only be known if you step inside. He followed her. The ship lifted into the dark, quiet space beyond the assembly's reach. Inside, everything shimmered with soft blue light and humming crystal. Nail looked around, wide-eyed. It was unlike anything he had seen before. Lysara watched him carefully. This human was not like the others. He had not come seeking power, mystery, or spectacle. He had come because he saw someone left behind, and she, for the first time in centuries, allowed herself to wonder what it might feel like to be seen, not as a symbol but as a person. Outside the window, stars stretched into endless night. But for Lysara and Nail, the journey was just beginning. The shuttle moved silently through the stars, guided by thought and light rather than engines and fuel. Nail sat near a wide window, watching unfamiliar constellations drift past. He had never felt so far from home. Yet something about the soft hum of the ship and the quiet presence of Lysara beside him made him feel strangely calm. She hadn't spoken since they left the ceremony. She simply stood near the controls, hands lightly resting on a glowing panel. The veil still covered her face, its silver threads gently swaying with the soft rhythm of the ship. They arrived at a station orbiting a pale green world. The place didn't look like a military post or a city. It was more like a garden suspended in space. Huge glass domes bloomed like flowers, filled with strange trees, glowing vines, and flowing streams that floated upward instead of down. Lysara led Nael down a walkway made of light. Their feet made no sound as they walked. When they entered one of the domes, the air was warm and sweet. Crystals hung from branches like fruit, and tiny creatures floated in the air like sparks from a fire. Nael broke the silence. This place, it doesn't feel real. It's very real, Lysara replied. This is my refuge, a part of my world untouched by tradition. Nael looked around, amazed. Why bring me here? Lysara turned to him. Because you are the first to choose me without fear or purpose, and because I think you should see what lies behind the veil. Nael stepped closer. I don't need to see your face to understand you. That may be true, she said softly, but I want you to see. Not for you, but for me. She raised her hand slowly and lifted the veil. Nael didn't gasp or speak. He just looked. Her face was unlike anything he had imagined. Her skin shimmered like the inside of a seashell, shifting between shades of blue and silver. Her eyes glowed gently, like twin stars caught in a soft mist. But it wasn't her features that struck him. It was the sadness in her expression, the weight of time, of silence, of being unseen for too long. You're, he began. I'm not what they feared, she said. No, Nael whispered. You're not. They stood in silence for a while, the garden around them alive with soft sounds and floating light. Then Lysara walked over to a small pool that reflected the stars above. She sat on a stone bench and looked into the water. When I was chosen to wear the veil, I was told it was an honor, a symbol of our people's mystery and wisdom. But it became a prison. I could no longer speak freely. I was watched, judged. The veil made me a myth, not a person. Nael sat beside her. Why didn't you leave? Because leaving meant shame, she said. It meant breaking a 1,000-year tradition. It meant giving up everything I had ever known. But you brought me here, Nail said. You lifted the veil. Yes, she said, because something changed when you spoke to me. I didn't see judgment in your eyes. I saw a question, and I realized I wanted to answer it. They sat together in the garden, surrounded by the quiet beauty of her hidden world. Over the dam. Next days, they explored it together. Lysara showed Nail trees that could sing when touched, lakes that remembered dreams, and stones that floated like feathers. In return, Nail shared stories of Earth, its cities, oceans, and music. He told her about his family, his lonely childhood, and his love for the stars. They laughed, walked, and sometimes simply sat in silence. A connection formed between them, not through grand gestures, but through shared moments. Lysara began to speak more freely. Her voice, once soft and guarded, now carried hints of joy. Nael listened with care, never pushing, never judging, but the peace couldn't last. One morning, as they stood near the garden's edge, a small drone appeared, an official message sphere from the Galactic Assembly. It hovered between them, glowing with authority. Lysara touched it gently, and the message unfolded in light. The voice of Maiden, elder of the Izarin, filled the air. Lysara, you have broken sacred law. Your actions have brought shame to your house. You are to return at once. The human must be dismissed. Your place is among your people, not wandering with outsiders. Nail clenched his fists. They can't control you. They think they can, she said calmly. But I'm tired of being told who I am. The message ended, leaving behind silence. Lysara looked at Nael, her expression unreadable. Will you go back? He asked. She shook her head. No, not this time. Nael took her hand and she didn't pull away. They stood together, looking out at the stars beyond the dome. A choice had been made, and neither of them would turn back. Behind them, the veil lay folded on a stone bench no longer needed. What lay ahead was uncertain, but for the first time Lysara didn't feel afraid. With Nael by her side, she wasn't just a symbol. She was herself, and together, they would face whatever came next. The days that followed were calm, but not quiet. Nael and Lysara remained hidden within the sanctuary dome, yet beyond its peaceful walls the galaxy stirred. Word of their union had escaped the garden. The choosing ceremony, always closely watched, had become the center of a growing storm. News of a human choosing the veiled starshade had spread across systems faster than light. Some praised it as a moment of unity, a step toward true connection among the stars. Others saw it as a violation, a threat to tradition and an insult to the ancient laws of the Izarin. Inside the garden, Lysara could feel the tension growing like a pulse in the air. She walked among the glowing trees with slow steps, trying to calm the thoughts racing in her mind. Nael noticed the change in her. She smiled less now, spoke more softly, and often looked up as if listening for something only she could hear. One evening, they sat near the singing stones, a place where sound turned into color. Nael tried to distract her with stories, but she seemed distant. Something's coming, she said almost to herself. Nael watched her carefully. Then we'll face it together. She looked at him with tired eyes. This isn't just about us anymore. My people, they won't let this pass quietly. I've broken a law that was never meant to be broken. They believe the veil protects not only tradition but identity. Nael reached out and took her hand. They can't erase you, Lysara. You're more than their rules. Her hand trembled in his. But they'll try. The warning arrived 2 days later, delivered by a formal envoy. The Izarin ship was silent and dark, its sleek black design floating just outside the dome. A single figure stepped through the airlock. Maiden, elder of tradition, cloaked in a robe made of stardust silk, his expression hard and unreadable. He stood before Lysara in the central chamber, surrounded by the glowing light of her sanctuary. You were chosen to represent our people, not betray them, Maiden said, his voice cold. I was never asked what I wanted, Lysara replied. You were given honor. You turned it into disgrace. I turned it into truth. Maiden's eyes narrowed. The council has ruled. Your title is revoked. Your name will be removed from the sacred record. You are no longer one of us. Nail stepped forward. She chose honesty over fear. That isn't betrayal. That's courage. You speak of things you do not understand, human, Maiden replied sharply. Our ways are not for outsiders to judge. But they affect her, Nail said. And she's more than a symbol. Maiden turned back to Lysara. You may stay here, but you will no longer be welcome in any Iceran realm. Your bond with this human ends our recognition of your lineage. Lysara didn't flinch. Then I am free. Maiden paused, as if surprised. For a moment, something almost like regret flickered in his eyes. Then he turned and left, disappearing, into the shadows of the ship that had brought him. The silence left behind felt heavier than any words. That night, Lysara stood alone at the edge of the dome, watching the stars. Nail joined her, saying nothing at first. He knew what had been taken from her people, her home, her identity. Yet she had chosen to lose all of that rather than live behind a veil again. Do you regret it? He asked gently. She turned to him. I regret that it had to be a choice at all, but not the choice I made. He nodded. Then neither do I. They embraced beneath the shimmer of twin moons that circled the distant world below them. For a moment they allowed themselves to forget the loss and hold on to what they had, each other. But reality returned quickly. Rumors had reached the Galactic Assembly. Political pressure mounted from other systems who believed that allowing such defiance from the Iceran weakened the balance of the Union. Some even questioned Earth's place in the interstellar community, arguing that humans were too new, too impulsive, too emotional. Nail received a summons. Earth's ambassadors wanted answers. Was this love, or had he broken protocol? He sat across from a panel of officials on a neutral station explaining everything, not just the facts but the feelings. How he had seen a person hidden in plain sight, how choice should mean more than tradition. He spoke with clarity and calm, but he knew the damage had already been done. Relationships among worlds were delicate, built on trust and caution. He had lit a match in a room filled with old paper. When he returned to Lysara, she was already packing supplies. They will not stop until they've turned this into something it's not, she said. Let's leave before they write our story for us. Where will we go? Nael asked. Anywhere the stars still shine. Together, they boarded a small vessel and slipped away into the dark, heading toward the edge of known space. They didn't run in fear, they left in hope. Hope that somewhere out there, away from laws and legends, they could build a life where being together didn't need permission. They had fractured the starlight, yes, but from the cracks, something new had begun to grow. Far beyond the mapped regions of the Galactic Union, where space turned quiet and the stars grew thin, a small green and blue planet spun gently beneath a golden sun. It had no name on any star chart, no history recorded in the archives of powerful civilizations. Yet on its surface, nestled between two gentle hills and a lake that reflected both day and night, stood a home built from stone, glass, and dreams. Here, Nael and Lysara found the peace they had never known among their own people. And here, they planted something that would grow far beyond them. Years had passed since they left the sanctuary dome. The world had changed without them, but their story had continued in its own quiet way. Lysara, once the veiled princess of a hidden race, now walked freely beneath twin skies. One sky belonged to the sun, golden and warm. The other belonged to the stars, dark and filled with wonder. At night, when both moons rose above the lake, their soft light reflected on the water like silver threads. In those moments, Nael and Lysara would sit by the shore and remember everything they had left behind, and everything they had chosen instead. Their home was more than a shelter. It became a place of welcome, Travelers, scholars, and even those once lost to exile found their way to the Garden of Two Skies. Some came seeking advice. Others came just to see the couple who had dared to break centuries of silence. They were never turned away. Nail greeted them with laughter and stories. Lysara shared songs older than time. And sometimes when the wind was still, the garden would echo with voices singing in harmony, voices that spoke a dozen languages but shared the same hope. Though far from politics and power, their lives had a quiet influence. Word spread that unity could grow without permission, and peace could bloom between differences. New alliances began forming among species that once avoided each other. Small changes, yes, but important ones. Lysara often said, "We were never meant to change everything, just enough." Nail had changed too. The wide-eyed diplomat had become a farmer, a builder, a guide. He no longer wore the uniform of Earth's envoy, but he still carried the spirit of understanding. With Lysara beside him, he had learned to see not just with his eyes but with his heart. He learned the language of silence, the meaning in pauses, and the comfort of simply being present. Their love was not perfect. They argued at times, disagreed about small things like when to plant seeds or how to rebuild a broken wall. But their love was real, steady like the hills, and deep like the lake. It grew not through grand gestures but through daily acts, sharing a meal, fixing a roof, listening to each other when the weight of memory returned. One spring morning, Lysara stood among blooming trees and watched the garden come alive. Birds with crystal feathers flew in slow patterns, and vines with silver blossoms reached toward the light. At her side, a small child laughed while chasing a floating petal. Her name was Avon. Born of two worlds, she carried the traits of both, her father's calm eyes and her mother's glowing skin. But more than anything, Avon carried a lightness, a freedom that neither Nail nor Lysara had known as children. They raised her not with rules but with values, kindness, curiosity, and courage. Avon learned to climb trees, read stories in different languages, and dance under the moons. And every year, on the day of her birth, they told her the tale of the veil, not as a warning but as a promise that she would never have to hide who she was. When Avon turned 7, a ship appeared in the sky. It was not from the Icerin or Earth. It came from the New Accord, a union of smaller worlds seeking peace through mutual understanding. The leaders invited Nail and Lysara to speak at the gathering of voices, held once every decade. After many years away, they returned not as rebels but as honored guests. The choosing ceremony had changed. It was no longer about display but discovery. Beings still stood in hope of connection, but now they also spoke, shared, and learned. Lysara stood at the same place she had once been ignored, and this time, a circle of children sat at her feet, listening to her stories. Nail stood beside her, holding Avon's hand. When the ceremony ended, the crowd stood and applauded, not just for what they had done, but for what they had become. Later that night, beneath stars that seemed a little brighter than before, they returned to their home. Avon ran ahead, her laughter filling the air. Nail and Lysara walked slowly, hand in hand. "Do you ever miss who we were?" Nail asked. Lysara looked up at the sky. "No, because everything we were led us to who we are now." He nodded. "And everything we are now will lead her further." They watched as Avon twirled beneath the trees, her arms wide, her joy endless. In the Garden of Two Skies, where silence once ruled and sorrow once lingered, there was now only life, growing, shining, and shared. And from the roots of one quiet choice 1,000 bright futures would bloom.